The billionaire CEO mockingly asked a waitress for financial advice, but her very first words left him completely speechless. Your support means everything. Like, comment and subscribe so we can keep sharing stories like this. Let's start today's story. I'll have the financial advice with a side of sparkling water, Jack Anderson said, not even bothering to look up from his phone. Christina Matthews paused, pen hovering over her notepad. After 8 hours on her feet at La Belle Époque, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, this was exactly the kind of arrogant customer she didn't need. I'm sorry, sir, I don't believe that's on our menu. Her voice remained professionally pleasant, though her blue eyes narrowed slightly. Jack finally looked up, and for a brief moment he was caught off guard. He'd expected an intimidated server, not the composed young woman with intelligent eyes, assessing him with barely concealed disdain. It was a joke, he said, tapping his platinum card against the table. But since you mentioned it, where would you invest $1 million in today's market? Christina's colleagues had warned her about him. Jack Anderson, 33, tech wunderkind turned investment mogul worth over $7 billion. Known for his ruthless business tactics and tendency to toy with people when bored. Honestly, she met his gaze directly. I'd diversify 40% into emerging market ETFs, focusing on sustainable energy, 30% in mid-cap value stocks currently undervalued due to market overcorrection, 20% in municipal bonds for the tax advantages, and keep 10% liquid for opportunistic acquisitions. The half-smile froze on Jack's face. He put down his phone. That's surprisingly specific. His eyes narrowed. Did you memorize that from somewhere? No, sir, just an opinion. Now, about your actual order. She kept her expression neutral, professional mask firmly in place. Wait, Jack leaned forward, suddenly interested. Explain the emerging market rationale. Christina glanced around at her other tables, then back at Jack. I have customers waiting. They can wait. I'm curious now. He gestured to the empty chair opposite him. Sit, 5 minutes. I'll make it worth your while. I could lose my job. Jack looked around, then waved over the maître d'. Pierre, I'm borrowing your waitress for a business discussion. Any issues? Pierre's eyes widened. Of course not, Mr. Anderson. Take all the time you need. Christina reluctantly sat down, setting her order pad aside. This is inappropriate. So was your surprisingly sophisticated investment advice. Jack studied her face carefully. Where did that come from? Finance major? Something like that. She straightened the silverware in front of her, avoiding his gaze. Columbia? NYU? Does it matter? You asked a question as a joke, I answered. She looked up. Though clearly you didn't expect a waitress to have a brain. Instead of being offended, Jack laughed. Fair enough, you caught me being an asshole, but now I'm genuinely curious. He tilted his head. The sustainable energy angle is interesting, but why emerging markets specifically? Christina hesitated only briefly before responding. Western markets are oversaturated with green investments chasing limited opportunities, creating a bubble effect. Meanwhile, developing nations offer more significant growth potential with their expanding energy needs and fewer regulatory hurdles. Their governments are desperate for infrastructure investment, providing tax incentives that boost ROI by at least 4% annually. Jack's eyes widened slightly. That wasn't just informed, it was sophisticated analysis. Who are you? He asked, genuinely perplexed. Just a waitress with an interest in finance, she replied with a small, enigmatic smile. Now, can I take your actual order, or would you prefer to continue interrogating me about my hobbies? Jack studied her for a long moment. There was more to this story, much more. But he recognized the wall when he saw one. Ribeye, rare, truffle mac on the side, and your name. I'd like your actual name. Christina Matthews. And I'll put that order in right away, Mr. Anderson. As she walked away, Jack found himself watching her with newfound interest. The graceful efficiency of her movements, the quiet dignity in her posture, despite the serving uniform. Most of his dates, models, socialites, the occasional actress, demanded attention. This woman seemed determined to avoid it. Jack pulled out his phone and opened a secure messaging app. Need background check. Christina Matthews. Works at La Belle Époque. Priority. The response came quickly. On it. Preliminary by morning. Jack put his phone away just as Christina returned with his sparkling water. Your food will be out shortly, Mr. Anderson. Jack, he corrected. And thank you, Christina. Something flashed in her eyes. Surprise at the courtesy, perhaps, before she nodded and moved on to her next table. Throughout his meal, Jack found his attention repeatedly drawn to her. She moved with practiced ease through the restaurant, efficiently managing her section while deflecting the occasional inappropriate comment from a drunken finance bro with subtle grace. When she brought his check, Jack added a $5,000 tip to his $300 meal. Christina's eyes widened when she saw it. This is excessive. Consider it a consulting fee for the financial advice. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket, which, by the way, was better than what I get from half my team at Anderson Capital. I can't accept this. You can, and you will. His tone was firm, but not unkind. And I'd like to continue our conversation sometime. Professionally. Christina hesitated, then slid the leather folio with his card and receipt back across the table. I don't think that would be appropriate. Jack raised an eyebrow. Scared. Her chin lifted slightly. Cautious, there's a difference. Fair enough. He pulled out a business card and wrote his private number on the back. When you change your mind, call me. I have a proposition that might interest someone with your unexpected talents. If, she corrected, taking the card reluctantly, if I change my mind. Jack smiled. Trust me, it's when. As he walked out of the restaurant into the cool Manhattan evening, his phone buzzed with a preliminary report. Christina Matthews, 25. Employment history checks out. Community college education. Nothing unusual. Full report tomorrow. Jack frowned, sliding into the back of his waiting Maybach. That couldn't be right. No one acquired that level of financial acumen from a community college finance class. She was hiding something, and Jack Anderson had made billions by uncovering what others tried to hide. Home, sir? His driver asked. No, Jack replied, his mind still on the waitress with the financial wizard's brain. Office. I need to look into something. Christina leaned against the wall in the employee locker room, staring at Jack Anderson's business card. $5,000. The exact amount she needed for next semester's tuition. Coincidence? Or had he somehow known? You okay, Chrissy? Mia, another waitress, asked as she changed out of her uniform. Fine. Christina tucked the card into her bag. Just a strange customer. That billionaire guy who monopolized your time. Pierre was practically drooling over him. Mia rolled her eyes. What did he want? Financial advice, Christina said with a wry smile. Mia snorted. Right. And I give quantum physics lectures on the side. Men like that only want one thing from waitresses. Not this time. Christina pulled on her worn peacoat. See you tomorrow. Outside, the October night was crisp. Christina walked 5 blocks to the subway, her mind replaying the interaction with Jack Anderson. It had been reckless to show her knowledge, but something about his arrogant assumption had triggered her. 3 years of careful anonymity, potentially compromised by 5 minutes of wounded pride. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate. Rent due tomorrow. You have your half. Christina closed her eyes briefly. The $5,000 would cover tuition and rent, with enough left over for groceries for months, but taking it felt dangerously close to establishing a connection she couldn't afford. Her phone buzzed again, this time with an email notification that made her blood freeze, regarding your application for financial assistance. She opened it with trembling fingers. Dear Miss Matthews, we regret to inform you that your request for additional financial aid has been denied. Christina leaned against a building, suddenly lightheaded. Without that aid, even with the 5,000 tip, she wouldn't make it through the semester. Everything she'd worked for, the careful plan to rebuild her life. Before she could reconsider, she pulled out Jack Anderson's card and dialed his private number. He answered on the second ring. That was faster than I expected. Christina swallowed her pride. I'd like to hear about that proposition. Excellent. She could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Are you free tomorrow, say noon? I have class until 2, then work at 5. Class? His tone sharpened with interest. Where? Christina hesitated. NYU, part-time MBA program. Interesting. My office at 3 then. I'll text you the address. Mr. Anderson. Jack. Jack, she corrected herself. What exactly is this proposition? There was a brief pause. Let's just say I could use someone with your financial instincts. My usual consultants are too embedded in conventional wisdom. You clearly think differently. And the compensation would make waiting tables unnecessary. Christina closed her eyes. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. I'll be there at 3, but I should warn you, if this is anything inappropriate, it's business. He cut her off, his tone suddenly cool. Whatever else you may have heard about me, I don't mix business with pleasure. The call ended, leaving Christina with a nagging feeling that she'd just made either the best decision of her life or the worst. At precisely 2:59 p.m. the following day, Christina stepped out of the elevator onto the 87th floor of the gleaming Anderson Capital headquarters. The receptionist looked her up and down, taking in her simple black pencil skirt and white blouse. The nicest outfit she owned, but clearly not up to the standards of the women who typically visited this floor. May I help you? Her tone suggested Christina had walked into the wrong building entirely. Christina Matthews, to see Jack Anderson. The receptionist's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. Do you have an appointment? Yes, for 3 o'clock. She checked her computer with obvious skepticism, then looked up in surprise. You're on his schedule, please take a seat. Christina sat on the edge of an uncomfortably modern chair, acutely aware that she didn't belong in this world of glass and steel and silent judgment. 3 years ago, she would have walked in with confidence, wearing designer clothes, her credentials unquestioned. Now. Ms. Matthews, a deep voice interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see a man in his 40s, with salt and pepper hair and a serious expression. I'm David Mercer, Mr. Anderson's chief of staff. He didn't offer to shake her hand. He asked me to escort you to his office. Christina followed him through a maze of glass-walled offices and open workspaces, where analysts hunched over multiple screens displaying financial data. No one looked up as she passed. Mercer stopped at a large corner office with spectacular views of Manhattan. Wait here. He disappeared inside. Through the glass, Christina could see Jack seated behind a massive desk, frowning at whatever Mercer was saying. He glanced up, caught her eye, and waved her in, dismissing Mercer with a curt nod. Christina. Jack stood as she entered, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Thank you for coming. Up here, in his natural habitat, Jack Anderson seemed even more imposing than at the restaurant. His tailored suit probably cost more than she made in 3 months, and the casual confidence with which he commanded this space made her painfully aware of how far she'd fallen. Your chief of staff doesn't approve of this meeting, she observed, sitting down. Jack's mouth quirked. Mercer doesn't approve of most things. It's why I keep him around. He studied her for a moment. You look different today. I'm not wearing an apron. It's more than that. His eyes narrowed slightly. You're more guarded. Last night, when I caught you off guard, I saw something genuine. I'm always genuine, Christina replied, just selectively expressive. That earned her a genuine laugh. Well said. He leaned back in his chair. I did some research on you last night. Christina tensed. Did you? Nothing invasive, basic background. He tilted his head. Community college, then waitressing, now part-time at NYU's MBA program. A solid path, but it doesn't explain your level of market knowledge. I read a lot. Bullshit. His bluntness was startling. What you gave me yesterday wasn't book knowledge. It was the kind of insight that comes from actual market experience. His eyes fixed on hers. So who are you really, Christina Matthews? For a moment, she considered walking out, but the memory of that rejection email kept her seated. Does it matter? You said you had a business proposition. Jack studied her for a long moment, then nodded, apparently deciding to let it go for now. I need a fresh perspective on some investment opportunities. He pressed a button on his desk, and a hidden panel in the wall slid open to reveal a large screen. Specifically, these. Christina turned to look at the display, which showed a series of prospective investments in various sectors. Her eyes widened slightly as she scanned the data. These are all pre-IPO opportunities in emerging markets, she observed. Risky, potentially very rewarding, he countered. But my team is divided. Half say invest heavily, half say avoid completely. He gestured toward the screen. What do you say? Christina stood up and approached the display, studying the figures more closely. Something about the pattern seemed familiar. May I? She gestured to the keyboard beneath the screen. Jack nodded, watching her intently. Christina began typing, pulling up additional data and arranging it in different configurations. As she worked, she forgot about Jack, forgot about her precarious situation, lost in the familiar flow of financial analysis. There, she said finally, stepping back. These three have solid fundamentals and management teams with proven track records. These two are overvalued based on projected market penetration, and this one... She pointed to a seemingly promising renewable energy company. This one is a sophisticated fraud. Jack's expression sharpened. Explain. The reported growth curve is too smooth. Real growth has variations, hiccups, and if you cross-reference their reported manufacturing capacity with their energy consumption at these facilities. She pulled up the relevant data. The numbers don't add up. They're reporting production levels that would require at least 40% more energy than they're actually using. Jack stood and moved beside her, studying the data with newfound intensity. His shoulder nearly touched hers as he leaned in, the faint scent of his expensive cologne registering at the edge of her awareness. How did you catch that? He asked quietly. Christina hesitated. Pattern recognition. I've seen similar discrepancies before. Jack turned to look at her, their faces suddenly close. Where? The intensity of his gaze made her take a step back. It's a common, fraudulent pattern. Not common enough that my entire team of analysts missed it, Jack countered. In fact, they were recommending this as our primary investment target. He studied her face. You just saved me from a potential $100 million mistake. Christina felt a flush of validation that she immediately tried to suppress. This wasn't her world anymore. She couldn't afford to get pulled back in. I should go. I'll be late for work. Don't go back to the restaurant, Jack said abruptly. Excuse me? I want to hire you as a consultant. Exclusive contract, your own office here, 7-figure compensation package. Christina stared at him. You can't be serious. I'm never anything but serious about talent. Jack's expression was intense. You have something my team of Ivy League MBAs doesn't. I want it working for me, not serving overpriced steaks. The offer was like a dream, a path back to the life she'd lost, the career that had been stolen from her. But at what cost? And how long before he discovered the truth? "I can't," she said, even as everything in her screamed to accept. Jack's expression hardened. "Why not? And don't tell me you prefer waitressing. It's complicated." "Uncomplicate it, or at least tell me what you're afraid of." Christina met his gaze directly. "What makes you think I'm afraid?" "Because you're obviously overqualified for your current life, which means you're hiding, and people only hide when they're afraid." His perception was unnervingly accurate. Christina looked away, toward the spectacular view of the city that had once been her playground and had become her prison. "I can't be publicly associated with Anderson Capital," she finally said, "or any financial institution." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Why not?" "That's personal. Not if you're going to work for me." He crossed his arms. "I need to know what I'm getting into." Christina hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. "I made some enemies in the financial world, powerful ones. It's better for everyone if I stay invisible." Jack studied her for a long moment. "What if I can guarantee your anonymity? Contract under a pseudonym, private office, no public association with the company. You would do that for someone you just met? For someone who just spotted a sophisticated fraud that my entire team missed?" "Absolutely." He stepped closer. "I didn't build this company by ignoring exceptional talent, Christina." The way he said her name, with a mixture of curiosity and something almost like respect, made her pause. The rational part of her brain screamed that this was a terrible idea, that she was risking everything she'd carefully rebuilt. But the part of her that had been buried for 3 years, the analyst who loved the intellectual challenge, who thrived on the complexity of markets, that part was awakening, hungry. "I'll need everything in writing, ironclad confidentiality agreements, and I work remotely, not from this office." Jack smiled slowly, the expression transforming his face. "So that's a yes." "It's a conditional maybe," Christina corrected, "pending contract review. I'll have legal draw up the paperwork tonight." He extended his hand. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Matthews." As she shook his hand, Christina felt the strangest sensation, like she was stepping back into a world she'd been exiled from, guided by the last person she should trust. What she didn't know was that Jack Anderson had already assigned a team to dig deeper into her past, and they were close to uncovering the secret she'd spent 3 years hiding. 2 weeks into her consulting arrangement with Anderson Capital, Christina was finally beginning to relax. The work was exhilarating, challenging in a way that waitressing could never be. Jack had kept his word about her anonymity, assigning her cases under the pseudonym CM, consulting and allowing her to work primarily from her apartment, coming to the office only for essential meetings. Today was one such meeting, scheduled with Jack and his executive team to discuss a potential acquisition target, a financial technology startup with a promising algorithm but questionable management. Christina arrived early, hoping to slip into the conference room unnoticed before the senior executives arrived. Her strategy failed when she found Jack already there, sleeves rolled up, studying projections on the large screen. "You're early," he observed without looking up. "So are you." "It's my company." "I'm never early, just present when needed." He finally turned to face her. "You look better." Christina raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "More confident, less like you're expecting someone to throw you out." He gestured to the chair beside his at the head of the table. "The work agrees with you." It was true. The past 2 weeks had been transformative. The salary Jack had offered allowed her to pay her tuition, move to a better apartment, and finally sleep without the constant anxiety of financial ruin looming over her. More than that, using her mind again, her real skills, felt like reclaiming a part of herself. "The work is fine," she conceded, taking a seat near the middle of the table instead of beside him. Jack noticed her choice, but didn't comment. "Just fine?" You've identified 2 potential frauds and flagged concerns about a management team that we later discovered was embezzling. I'd say you're excelling." Christina shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "It's what you hired me for." Jack studied her for a moment. "You know what I can't figure out? Why someone with your talent was waiting tables in the first place. MBA or not, you clearly already know more than most of my analysts." Christina tensed. She'd been waiting for this line of questioning. "I told you, complications. Enemies in finance, you said." Jack leaned against the conference table. "I've been in this business for over a decade. I know most of the major players. Who exactly are you hiding from?" Before Christina could formulate a response, the door opened and David Mercer entered, followed by several executives. The chief of staff shot Christina a suspicious glance before addressing Jack. "Everyone's here. Shall we begin?" Jack's eyes lingered on Christina for a moment longer before he nodded. "Let's start." The meeting proceeded efficiently. Charts and projections flashed across the screen as various department heads presented their analyses of the acquisition target. Christina listened carefully, making notes, but not speaking. "So the consensus is to proceed with the acquisition?" Jack asked after the last presentation. Nods around the table. "What about you, Christina? You've been quiet." All eyes turned to her. She could feel Mercer's particular gaze, heavy with disapproval. "I have concerns," she said carefully. "Of course you do," Mercer muttered under his breath. Jack shot him a warning look. "Explain." Christina stood and approached the screen, pulling up specific data points from the due diligence report. "Their algorithm isn't as proprietary as they claim. The core functionality uses open-source components with minimal customization. What they're really selling is the dataset they've compiled, but even that has issues." She highlighted several discrepancies in the target company's performance metrics. "These growth patterns suggest data manipulation." "That's a serious accusation," said the head of legal, frowning. "On what basis?" "Pagination artifacts in their user engagement data," Christina explained. "When you automatically generate reports, page breaks create subtle patterns in the data. But these reports show different patterns when comparing monthly to quarterly data, suggesting the reports weren't generated from the same source data." Jack's eyes narrowed. "They're cooking the books." "I believe so, yes." Mercer shook his head. "This is absurd. We've had 3 teams review their financials." "They wouldn't catch this," Christina replied calmly. "It's not about the numbers themselves, but inconsistencies in how they're reported. And you just happen to know how to spot these obscure pagination artifacts." Mercer's tone was openly skeptical now. "Who exactly vetted this? Consultant?" The room fell uncomfortably silent. "I did," Jack said flatly, "and her track record over the past 2 weeks speaks for itself." "With all due respect," Mercer persisted, "we know nothing about Ms. Matthews' background or qualifications. For all we know, she could be working for a competitor." Christina felt her cheeks burning. This was exactly the kind of attention she'd been afraid of. "That's enough, David." Jack's voice held a warning, but Mercer wasn't backing down. "No, it's not enough. You brought in this waitress." "Former waitress," Jack corrected coldly. "And suddenly she's overruling our entire analytics department. Something doesn't add up." Mercer turned to Christina. "Who are you really?" Christina stood her ground. "I'm exactly who Jack hired me to be. Someone who sees patterns others miss." "Convenient skill," Mercer said. "Almost like you've had professional training, yet your resume shows nothing of the sort." My background isn't relevant to my ability to do this job. Actually, it's entirely relevant when you're advising on billion-dollar acquisitions." Mercer turned to Jack. "I took the liberty of running a deeper background check." Jack's expression darkened. "Without my authorization. As chief of staff, protecting this company is my responsibility." Mercer pulled out a file. Christina Matthews only exists as of 3 years ago. Before that, nothing. No credit history, no employment records, no social media. She appeared out of nowhere at age 22. Christina felt the blood drain from her face. You had no right. Actually, I had every right. Mercer turned to address the room. Our mysterious consultant is either using a false identity or has gone to extraordinary lengths to erase her past. Either way, can we trust her with sensitive financial decisions? The room erupted in murmurs. Christina looked at Jack, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. "Meeting adjourned," he said abruptly. "Everyone out, except you," he pointed at Christina, "and you," he pointed at Mercer. The executives filed out, casting curious glances over their shoulders. When the door closed behind them, Jack turned to Mercer. "Never undermine me like that again. Jack, be reasonable. That wasn't a suggestion." Jack's voice was quiet, but lethal. "You're on thin ice, David. Get out." Mercer hesitated, then gathered his papers and left, closing the door with deliberate softness that somehow seemed more threatening than a slam. Alone with Jack, Christina felt her carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. She hadn't expected the background check to go so deep. "Sit down," Jack said, his tone gentler than it had been with Mercer, but still firm. Christina sat, her mind racing through options. Denial, partial truth, full confession. "Is what he said true?" Jack asked, taking the seat across from her. "Did you appear out of nowhere 3 years ago?" Christina met his gaze. "Yes." Jack nodded slowly. "I suspected as much. The disconnect between your skills and your resume was too significant." He leaned forward. "Who were you before Christina Matthews?" "I can't tell you that." "Can't? Or won't?" "Both." Christina straightened her shoulders. "My past is my own, Jack. It has nothing to do with my work for you." "It does, if it puts my company at risk." His expression was serious. "Are you running from something illegal?" "No." That much was true, at least. "I never broke any laws." "Are you in danger?" The question caught her off guard. "What? Is someone trying to harm you? Is that why you changed your identity?" There was genuine concern in his voice, which confused her even more than the question itself. "No, it's not like that." Jack studied her face. "Then what is it like, Christina?" "Because right now, I've got a chief of staff who thinks you're a corporate spy, executives questioning your credibility, and mounting evidence that you're hiding something significant." Christina closed her eyes briefly. Everything she'd worked to rebuild was slipping away. Again, "I should go." She stood. This was a mistake. Jack remained seated. "Running again? Is that your solution to everything?" The comment stung, mainly because it contained a kernel of truth. "I'm not running. I'm protecting myself." "From what?" Jack stood now, frustration evident in his voice. "I've given you everything you asked for. Anonymity, remote work, exceptional compensation. I've defended you against my own staff. What more do you need from me to trust me with the truth?" "It's not about trust, Jack. The hell it isn't." He moved closer. "You've spent 3 years hiding. At some point, you need to decide if you're going to live your life looking over your shoulder or face whatever you're running from." His words hit uncomfortably close to home, sparking a flash of anger. "That's easy for you to say," she shot back. "You've never lost everything in a single day, never had your life stolen from you, never been betrayed by—" She stopped herself, already saying too much. Jack's eyes narrowed. "Betrayed by whom?" Christina grabbed her bag. "I'm leaving." "Christina! My consulting agreement has a termination clause. Consider this my notice." She headed for the door, heart pounding. "I know who you are," Jack said quietly. Christina froze, her hand on the doorknob. Elena Christina Wright, he continued, former senior analyst at Blackwood Financial. Specialized in emerging markets, considered a rising star until 3 years ago, when you were implicated in an insider trading scheme that cost investors millions. You disappeared right before the SEC investigation concluded. Slowly, Christina turned to face him, her worst fears confirmed. How long have you known? I suspected something from our first conversation at the restaurant. Jack's expression was unreadable. The background check confirmed my suspicions last week. Last week? She stared at him. You've known for a week and didn't say anything? I was waiting for you to trust me enough to tell me yourself. So this was all a trap? Hire me, wait for me to incriminate myself, and then what? Turn me into the SEC? Jack's expression hardened. If that was my plan, I could have done it already. Then what do you want from me? Christina demanded. The truth. He stepped closer. The real story, not the official version that drove you into hiding. Christina felt cornered, exposed. The very thing she'd feared from the beginning had happened. Why would you believe anything other than the official story? Because I've watched you work for 2 weeks, Jack replied. You have an ethical compass that doesn't align with someone who would commit fraud. And because the Elena Wright case never sat right with me, even back then. Christina felt a surge of something unexpected, hope, dangerous and fragile. It doesn't matter now, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. The damage is done. My reputation is destroyed, my career over. Unless the truth comes out. Jack held her gaze. Tell me what really happened, Elena. The sound of her real name, unspoken for 3 years, broke something inside her. I was set up, she said, the words rushing out after years of silence, by my fiancé, Robert Blackwood. Blackwood? As in, the founder's son, yes. Elena's bitter laugh held no humor. The golden boy of Blackwood Financial, destined to take over the company. We were engaged. I thought I knew him. What happened? Eleanor moved away from the door, the weight of silence finally lifting. I discovered irregularities in some of our Asian market accounts, significant discrepancies that suggested insider trading. When I investigated, the trail led back to Robert and his father. They were using advanced knowledge of the firm's trading positions to make personal investments through shell companies. Jack nodded. And you confronted them. Stupidly, yes, I thought Robert would do the right thing. She shook her head at her own naivety. Instead, he apologized, promised to fix it, asked me to keep quiet for just a few days. I believed him. The next morning, the SEC raided our offices. Somehow, all the evidence pointed to me. My signature on documents I'd never seen, transactions authorized through my credentials, offshore accounts in my name. A perfect frame, Jack murmured. Robert appeared devastated by my betrayal. His father publicly vowed that no one, not even his future daughter-in-law, was above the law. Eleanor's voice hardened. Meanwhile, they froze my accounts, seized my assets for investigation, and spread rumors that destroyed my professional reputation. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. So you ran. I disappeared, changed my name, started over with nothing. She met his gaze defiantly. I wasn't guilty, but I couldn't prove it, and I refused to go to prison for their crimes. Jack was quiet for a moment, processing. Why didn't you fight back, go to the media? With what evidence? They erased anything that implicated them and fabricated evidence against me. It was my word against the Blackwood Empire. She shook her head. Even my own parents doubted me. Understanding dawned in Jack's eyes. That's why my investment portfolio looked familiar to you. You recognized the fraud pattern because it's similar to what the Blackwoods did. Elena nodded. Exactly. Jack moved to the window, looking out at the city as he considered her story. The Blackwoods have a reputation for ruthlessness, but this goes beyond that into criminal territory. Now you understand why I can't be publicly associated with any financial institution if they discover I'm working in finance again, using my expertise. They might worry you're gathering evidence against them, Jack finished, or simply want to ensure you stay discredited. Precisely. Jack turned back to face her, his expression determined. What if we could prove your innocence? Elena laughed bitterly. After 3 years? Impossible. Any evidence is long gone. Maybe not. Jack's eyes had that focused intensity she'd come to recognize when he was formulating a strategy. Financial criminals are creatures of habit. If they framed you, they've likely used similar tactics against others. What are you suggesting? That we investigate, quietly, find their pattern, build a case? Eleanor stared at him. Why would you do that? Why risk your company, your reputation, for someone you barely know? Jack was silent for a moment, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. Because I've spent my career watching people like the Blackwoods abuse their power, while talented people like you pay the price. He moved closer. And because, in the 2 weeks you've worked here, you've shown more integrity and brilliance than most people I've known for years. The sincerity in his voice was unexpected, disarming. Elena had spent 3 years trusting no one, suspecting everyone. The idea of having an ally, especially one as powerful as Jack Anderson, was both terrifying and exhilarating. It's too dangerous, she said, but with less conviction. For whom? You're already in hiding. I've made my career by taking calculated risks. Jack's expression turned grim. Besides, Blackwood Financial is a competitor that uses unethical tactics. Taking them down serves justice and business. You make it sound simple. It won't be. But between your insider knowledge and my resources. He let the implication hang. Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in years, possibility. The chance, however slim, of reclaiming her name, her life. If we do this, she said carefully, it has to be airtight. No loose ends, no assumptions, and no one can know, not Mercer, not your executive team, no one. Jack nodded. Agreed. And if it becomes too dangerous, if there's any sign they suspect what we're doing, we stop immediately. I'll defer to your judgment on that. He extended his hand. Partners. Elena hesitated only briefly before taking his hand. Partners. As their hands met, she felt a strange sense of connection, like two people joining forces against a common enemy. Yes, but something more. An unexpected trust forming between two individuals accustomed to trusting no one. What neither of them knew was that across town, in the luxurious offices of Blackwood Financial, Robert Blackwood was reviewing a security report that had flagged an unusual pattern of searches in their database. Searches focused on transactions from 3 years ago, the very transactions that had been used to frame Elena Wright. The hunt had already begun. For the next 2 weeks, Eleanor and Jack worked in secret, building their case against Blackwood Financial. By day, she continued her consulting work under her Christina Matthews identity. By night, they combed through financial records, searching for the patterns that would expose Robert Blackwood's crimes. They converted a secure room in Jack's penthouse into their investigation headquarters, walls covered with timelines, transaction records, and photographs of key players. The space became their sanctuary, the only place where Eleanor could fully be herself. "I found something," Jack announced one evening as Elena reviewed Blackwood's Asian market trades. She looked up to find him holding a stack of printouts, excitement evident in his expression. After countless hours working together in this intimate space, she'd learned to read his subtle mood shifts, the slight crease between his eyebrows when concentrating, the almost imperceptible smile when he discovered something significant. "What is it?" She joined him at the central table, acutely aware of his proximity as he spread the documents before her. 3 more cases with similar patterns to yours. All talented analysts who uncovered irregularities, all suddenly implicated in fraud, all professionally destroyed. His voice held controlled anger. The Blackwoods have been systematically eliminating threats from within. Elena studied the cases, recognition dawning. I knew 2 of these people, brilliant analysts. I never believed they were guilty. They weren't. Jack pointed to transaction records. Same signature methods used in your case. Falsified authorizations, manufactured evidence, consistent timing between discovery and takedown. Elena felt a surge of vindication mixed with sadness for her former colleagues. This proves it's a pattern, but not that the Blackwoods are responsible. No, but this might. Jack pulled up an email on his secure laptop. My team intercepted communications between Robert Blackwood and their compliance officer discussing containment procedures for internal threats. That's still circumstantial. We need concrete evidence linking them directly to the fraudulent transactions. Jack ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that had become familiar during their late-night sessions. You're right. We need an insider. Elena tensed. That's too risky. Anyone close enough to have that information is either complicit or under their control. Not necessarily. Jack hesitated. What about your former assistant at Blackwood? James Chen. Eleanor stared at him. How do you know about James? Background research. At her expression, Jack had the grace to look somewhat apologetic. I needed to understand all the players. James was reassigned after I left. I have no idea where he is now. London office, still with Blackwood, but isolated, effectively demoted. Jack pulled up Chen's current profile. He's been passed over for promotion 3 times, despite excellent performance reviews. Elena studied the information, memories of her earnest young assistant flooding back. James was loyal to me. He never believed the accusations, which is probably why they sidelined him. Jack met her eyes. He might help us, or he might report back to Robert immediately. She shook her head. It's too dangerous. More dangerous than living in hiding for the rest of your life? Jack challenged. At some point, we have to take calculated risks. Before Elena could respond, Jack's private phone rang. He checked the caller ID and frowned. It's Mercer. At this hour? He put the call on speaker. This better be important, David. It is. Mercer's voice sounded tense. Robert Blackwood just called. He wants to meet with you tomorrow. Says he has a mutually beneficial proposition. Elena froze, blood draining from her face. Jack's eyes locked with hers. Did he say what kind of proposition? Jack asked, voice carefully neutral. A potential partnership on Asian market expansion. He specifically mentioned your recent interest in those markets, the same markets Elena had been researching. It couldn't be coincidence. Schedule it, Jack said after a brief pause. My office, 2 p.m. Will do. Mercer hesitated. Jack, I should mention, he asked if you're still working with the consultant with the remarkable insights. His words. Elena felt her heart stop. Did he mention anyone by name? No, just that description. Tell him my consulting arrangements are confidential. Anything else? That's all. Should I be concerned? No. Jack's tone was dismissive. Just the usual corporate fishing. Good night, David. He ended the call and the room fell into heavy silence. They know, Elena whispered. Somehow they know I'm working with you. Jack shook his head. They suspect, but they don't know. If they had proof, Robert wouldn't be making social calls. He'd be threatening legal action. This is exactly what I feared. Elena began pacing, panic rising. I need to disappear. Change identities again, move cities. Stop. Jack stepped into her path, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders. Running is exactly what they want. It reinforces the narrative that you're guilty. What choice do I have? Her voice cracked with frustration. They destroyed my life once. They'll do it again. And this time, they'll destroy you too. Let them try. The quiet confidence in his voice made her pause. I'm not some junior analyst they can intimidate. I'm Jack Anderson. My company's worth more than theirs. My political connections run deeper, and unlike them, I don't have a history of suspicious analyst departures. Elena looked up at him, realizing how close they were standing. In the weeks they'd worked together, something had shifted between them. A growing trust, yes, but something more. Something that made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with fear. You don't understand what they're capable of, she said quietly. I understand exactly what they're capable of. His hands tightened slightly on her shoulders. What you don't understand is what I'm capable of when someone threatens people I care about. The simple declaration stunned her. 3 years of isolation had made her forget what it felt like to have someone in her corner, someone willing to fight for her. Why are you doing this, Jack? Really? The question had been building for weeks. You've built your reputation as a ruthless businessman. Why risk everything for me? Jack was silent for a moment, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. Because when you walked into my life, you were the first real thing I'd encountered in years. His voice was low, honest, in a way she'd never heard before. Everyone in my world wants something from me. Money, connections, status. You challenged me, saw through me, called me on my bullshit, and despite everything you've been through, you still have more integrity than anyone I know. The raw sincerity in his voice rendered her speechless. Also, he added, a hint of his usual confidence returning, I really hate losing, and I'm not about to let the Blackwoods win. Despite everything, Elena laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. So what's your plan? Walk into a meeting with Robert Blackwood and accuse him of framing me? No. Jack's eyes gleamed with strategic calculation. I'm going to make him think I'm interested in his proposition, while using the meeting to gather intelligence. He'll be suspicious, of course, but his ego won't let him pass up the opportunity to assess whether I know about you. Jack released her shoulders, stepping back to give her space. Meanwhile, you'll be monitoring the meeting remotely. What? No, that's too risky. It's controlled risk. You know Robert better than anyone. You'll recognize his tells, the hidden meanings in his statements. Elena considered the strategy. It was dangerous, but Jack was right. This might be their best opportunity to gather information. If he discovers I'm involved, he won't. Jack's confidence was unwavering. Trust me, Elena. Those 2 words, trust me, had been the downfall of many. Yet looking at Jack now, she realized she did trust him, perhaps more than she'd trusted anyone since her world collapsed. All right, she conceded, but we do this my way. No unnecessary risks. Agreed. Jack checked his watch. It's late. You should get some rest before tomorrow. Elena nodded, gathering her notes. As she packed up, a realization struck her. I can't go back to my apartment. If they're watching you, they might be watching me too. Jack didn't hesitate. Stay here. The guest suite is ready. Jack. It's secure, private, and has a separate entrance. No one will know you're here. His tone was practical, but his eyes held something more complex. The thought of staying in Jack's penthouse, being that close to him, sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. Just for tonight, she agreed finally. As Jack showed her to the guest suite, luxurious yet understated, Elena felt oddly at home despite the unfamiliar surroundings. For 3 years, she'd been running, hiding, looking over her shoulder. Tonight, for the first time since her world collapsed, she felt protected. Thank you, she said simply, as Jack prepared to leave her at the door. He paused, studying her face with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. For a moment, she thought he might say something, or perhaps do something that would cross the careful boundary they'd maintained. Instead, he simply nodded. "Sleep well, Elena." As the door closed behind him, Elena released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Tomorrow would bring a confrontation with the man who had destroyed her life. Tonight, she was under the protection of the man who might help her reclaim it. The realization that she wanted more than just Jack's protection was a complication she wasn't prepared to address, not with everything else at stake. Robert Blackwood arrived at Anderson Capital precisely at 2 p.m., a study in calculated charm. Tall and classically handsome, with the easy confidence of old money, he greeted Jack with the warmth of a long-time colleague rather than a competitor. "Jack, appreciate you making time." His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. "Impressive operation you've built here." From the secure monitoring room adjacent to Jack's office, Elena watched through the one-way glass, a headset allowing her to hear every word. Seeing Robert again, his familiar gestures, the way he casually adjusted his Patek Philippe watch, brought a flood of painful memories. "This is a mistake," she whispered into the microphone, connected to the nearly invisible earpiece Jack wore. "He's too good at this game." Jack gave no indication he'd heard her, smoothly directing Robert to the sitting area of his office rather than the more formal conference table. "What brings Blackwood Financial to my door?" Jack asked, his tone casually curious as they settled into the leather chairs. "We don't typically move in the same circles." Robert laughed easily. "That's precisely why I'm here. Our firms have complementary strengths. Your tech innovations, our established Asian market presence, seems like a natural fit for collaboration." "Interesting timing," Jack observed. "We've only recently begun exploring those markets." Robert's smile didn't waver. "News travels fast in our world. Word is you've been making remarkably astute moves in territories typically challenging for newcomers." Elena tensed. The reference was too specific to be coincidental. "I have good people," Jack replied noncommittally. "Indeed." Robert leaned forward slightly. "In fact, I've heard you recently acquired quite the analyst, someone with unusual insight into market patterns." Elena's heart pounded. "He's fishing," she whispered to Jack. "He suspects but doesn't know for certain." "We're always recruiting talent," Jack said, his expression revealing nothing. "Of course." Robert sat back, seemingly relaxed. "Speaking of talent, do you remember that unfortunate business with Elena Wright a few years back?" The direct mention of her name sent a shock through Elena's system. She gripped the edge of the console, knuckles white. Jack raised an eyebrow, the picture of mild interest. "Vaguely. Analyst involved in some trading scandal?" "Senior analyst," Robert corrected. "Brilliant woman. We were engaged, actually. I didn't know that. Few did. We kept our relationship relatively private." Robert's expression shifted to one of practiced regret. "Devastating when we discovered what she'd been doing. Using client information for personal gain, manipulating positions." Eleanor fought the urge to scream at the blatant lies. "Sounds like a breach of trust on multiple levels," Jack observed. "Exactly." Robert nodded, studying Jack carefully. The personal betrayal was difficult, but the professional implications were worse. She disappeared before the full investigation concluded, essentially an admission of guilt. "Or self-preservation," Jack suggested mildly. "Your firm has a certain reputation for handling internal issues decisively." A flicker of something, surprise, concern, crossed Robert's face before his smooth mask returned. "We believe in accountability, as I'm sure you do." "Absolutely, when applied to the right people." The subtle emphasis wasn't lost on Robert. His eyes narrowed slightly. "The right people generally reveal themselves through their actions, don't they?" The conversation had shifted from cordial to charged, meanings layered beneath seemingly innocent exchanges. "He's worried," Eleanor said into the microphone. Change tactics. Ask about their recent personnel changes. Jack smoothly redirected. I noticed Blackwood has experienced significant turnover in your analytics department recently, unusual for a firm that values loyalty. Robert hesitated just long enough to confirm the hit had landed. Restructuring to improve efficiency, standard business practice. Of course. Though losing 4 senior analysts in 18 months seems costly, the financial industry evolves. Some adapt, others don't. Robert's smile turned razor-thin. But we're not here to discuss HR strategies. I'm proposing a joint venture in the Vietnam tech sector. He proceeded to outline a partnership proposal that, on the surface, appeared advantageous to both companies. As he spoke, Elena analyzed his presentation, spotting the hidden traps, clauses that would give Blackwood privileged access to Anderson Capital's proprietary trading algorithms, client lists, and internal procedures. It's a data mining operation, she told Jack. The partnership is just cover to access your systems. Jack listened to the proposal with polite interest, asking occasional questions that revealed nothing of his true thoughts. I'll need time to review the specifics with my team, he said when Robert concluded. Of course. Robert stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Take all the time you need, though markets move quickly, as you know. Jack walked him to the door. One question before you go. Why approach me directly? Our firms have acquisition departments for this sort of thing. Robert paused, studying Jack with newfound intensity. Let's just say, I prefer to look a potential partner in the eye. Tells you much more than spreadsheets and projections ever could. And what do you see? A worthy adversary, or ally, depending on your decision. Robert extended his hand. I look forward to your response, Jack. Uddin. After Robert departed, Jack locked his office door and joined Elena in the monitoring room. She was already reviewing the recorded meeting, making notes on Robert's behavior patterns. He's definitely suspicious, she said without looking up. The way he brought up my case so directly, he's testing whether you know who I am. Agreed. Jack loosened his tie, but he's not certain. If he had proof, he'd have been more direct. Don't underestimate him. Robert excels at appearing casual while strategically cornering his prey. Elena finally looked up, her expression troubled. The proposal is a trap. He wants access to your systems, your data. Obviously, Jack said, sitting beside her. The question is why? What does he expect to find? Elena considered the question. Evidence that I'm working with you. Transaction records, communications, anything that would confirm his suspicions and potentially implicate you in harboring a fugitive. Then we give him exactly what he wants, Jack said, his expression shifting to one she recognized, the strategic predator who had built a financial empire. What do you mean? We accept the proposal, with modifications that limit their access, of course. Then we use the partnership to access their systems. Eleanor stared at him. That's incredibly risky. High risk, high reward. Jack's eyes held a determined gleam. We need internal documents to prove they framed you. This gives us a legitimate way in. There's nothing legitimate about corporate espionage, Jack. It's not espionage if they invite us in. His smile held a dangerous edge. Besides, we're not stealing trade secrets. We're gathering evidence of criminal activity. Eleanor stood, pacing the small room. Even if we could access their systems, what exactly are we looking for? They would have purged any incriminating evidence years ago. No one purges everything. There are always traces, especially in an organization that size. Jack leaned forward. Think, Elena, where would the evidence be? She closed her eyes, mentally walking through Blackwood Financial's infrastructure. The compliance department maintains untouchable archives, regulatory requirement. And Robert's father kept a private server for sensitive communications. Could we access either? The archives, possibly, through the partnership. The private server. She shook her head. Impossible without physical access to their headquarters. Jack was quiet for a moment, thinking, what if we had physical access? Elena laughed incredulously. What are you suggesting? Breaking into Blackwood Tower? Not breaking in, walking in, invited. Jack stood, energy radiating from him. Blackwood Financial's annual charity gala is next month. Every major player in the industry will be there. Including you? Elena asked. Including us. His eyes met hers. If we accept this partnership proposal, we'll naturally be invited. It's the perfect cover. Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine. You want me to attend an event filled with people who know exactly who I am? People who were involved in destroying my career? Not as Elena Wright. Jack moved closer. Jack. As Christina Matthews, my mysterious financial consultant who never appears in public until now. They'll recognize me. Will they? It's been 3 years. You've changed your appearance, your style, your mannerisms. He gestured to her shorter, darker hair, her different makeup style, the subtle but significant changes in her presentation. Besides, people see what they expect to see. No one will be looking for Elena Wright at Jack Anderson's side. The plan was audacious, bordering on insane. Yet Elena couldn't deny it had potential. Robert's unexpected approach had created an opportunity they hadn't anticipated. It's a massive gamble, she said finally. Life is a gamble. Jack's expression softened. But for what it's worth, I'm betting on you. The simple statement, delivered with such conviction, touched something deep within her. If we do this, she said slowly, we need a foolproof plan, contingencies for every scenario, and a clear exit strategy if things go wrong. Already working on it. Jack's confident smile returned. Trust me, by the time we're done, Robert Blackwood won't know what hit him. As they began strategizing, Elena realized something had fundamentally changed. For 3 years, she'd been reacting, running, hiding, surviving. Now, for the first time, she was taking control, moving from defense to offense. The shift was both terrifying and exhilarating, and so was the growing awareness that her feelings for Jack had evolved beyond professional alliance or even friendship. Something deeper was developing, something she wasn't ready to name but couldn't ignore. As Jack outlined his initial thoughts for their counterstrike against the Blackwoods, Elena watched him with mixed emotions. He'd become her champion, her partner in this dangerous game. But allowing herself to feel more would introduce a vulnerability she couldn't afford, not with everything else at stake. Yet when their eyes met across the table, the connection between them was undeniable. For better or worse, their fates were now intertwined. What neither of them realized was that Robert Blackwood had left the meeting with his own suspicions confirmed. He couldn't prove that Christina Matthews was Elena Wright, not yet, but his instincts told him he was right. And Robert Blackwood always trusted his instincts. Back at Blackwood Tower, he made a single phone call. "We have a situation," he said simply. "I need everything you can find on Jack Anderson's new consultant, and I mean everything." The hunt was intensifying. The question now was, who would become the hunter and who the prey? The Blackwood Financial Charity Gala transformed the Metropolitan Museum's Temple of Dendur into a showcase of wealth and power. Under the soaring glass ceiling, New York's financial elite mingled among ancient Egyptian artifacts, champagne flowing as freely as insider information. Elena, now transformed into a polished version of Christina Matthews, stood at the edge of the crowd, fighting the urge to flee. Her dark hair was elegantly styled, her midnight blue gown selected specifically to differ from anything Elena Wright would have worn. Even her posture was different, more confident, more assertive. "You look stunning," Jack murmured, appearing at her side with 2 champagne flutes, "and completely unrecognizable. I feel like I'm walking into the lion's den wearing a steak costume." She accepted the champagne, but didn't drink. Lions are predictable. These people are worse. Jack surveyed the room with calculated nonchalance. But the plan is solid. 20 minutes of strategic mingling, then I create a distraction while you slip away. The plan was indeed meticulous. Using the partnership negotiations as cover, they'd obtained the building's security protocols. Tonight, while the company's leadership was occupied with the gala, Elena would access Robert's father's private office on the secure executive floor, using the credentials Jack had obtained through his considerable resources. "There's Robert," Elena whispered, spotting her ex-fiancé across the room. 3 o'clock with the silver-haired man. "William Blackwood himself," Jack observed, "father and son holding court." Elena nodded. "They're watching us." "Let them watch." Jack's hand settled at the small of her back, the touch both reassuring and possessive. "It's all part of the show." The show included presenting their relationship as more than professional, a calculated move to explain why Jack would bring his reclusive consultant to such a high-profile event. The pretense came more naturally than Elena had expected, the chemistry between them requiring little acting. "Jack Anderson!" A booming voice interrupted their conversation. William Blackwood approached, Robert half a step behind. "Glad you could make it. And this must be the brilliant Ms. Matthews we've heard so much about." Eleanor met William's gaze directly, years of suppressed anger channeled into cool composure. "Mr. Blackwood, your reputation precedes you." "As does yours, my dear, though finding information about you proved remarkably challenging." His smile didn't reach his eyes, almost as if you appeared out of nowhere. "The best talents often emerge from unexpected places," Jack interjected smoothly. "Indeed." Robert's gaze remained fixed on Elena, studying her with unsettling intensity. "You seem familiar, Ms. Matthews. Have we met before?" "I don't believe so," Elena replied, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "I would remember. Perhaps at a conference? I speak at many financial forums. I avoid public events generally." She smiled thinly. "Tonight is an exception. For Jack, obviously." Robert glanced between them. "How fortunate he is to have inspired such flexibility in your habits." The implication hung in the air, deliberately provocative. Jack's hand pressed slightly firmer against her back. "Ms. Matthews has been an invaluable addition to my team," he said. "Her insights on the Asian markets have been particularly useful for our partnership discussions." William Blackwood nodded. "Speaking of which, we should finalize those details soon, perhaps over dinner next week." "My office would be more appropriate," Jack countered. "My team has prepared counter-proposals to some of your more ambitious requests for access." A flicker of annoyance crossed William's face. "Business is built on trust, Jack." "And verified by contracts," Jack replied pleasantly. "I trust you understand." The tension was interrupted by the arrival of the mayor, eager to speak with William. As the elder Blackwood moved away, Robert lingered, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. "You know," he said quietly, "you remind me of someone I used to know, someone very special." Elena maintained her composure. "I get that a lot. I must have one of those faces." "No," Robert shook his head slightly. "You're quite unique, as was she." Jack stepped subtly closer to Elena. "If you'll excuse us, Robert, I promise to introduce Christina to some potential clients." "Of course." Robert's smile was razor-sharp. "We'll have plenty of time to become better acquainted through our partnership." As they moved away, Eleanor released a shaky breath. "He knows. He can't prove it, but he knows." "Then we stick to the plan," Jack said, guiding her through the crowd. "The longer we're visible here, the more secure your alibi." They spent the next half-hour strategically circulating, ensuring they were seen by as many people as possible. All the while, Elena felt Robert's eyes following her movements. "It's time," Jack said finally, checking his watch. "You remember the route?" Elena nodded. "Service elevator to the 42nd floor, north corridor to the executive suite, secondary office at the end of the hall." The security pass will work on all doors except William's private office, which needs the key code you obtained. And if you encounter anyone? I'm looking for the restroom. Got disoriented after too much champagne. She forced a smile. Basic social engineering. Jack's expression turned serious. If anything feels wrong, abort immediately. Your safety matters more than any evidence. The genuine concern in his voice made her pause. Over the weeks they'd worked together, Jack had become far more than an ally. The lines between their professional partnership and personal connection had blurred, creating something neither had anticipated. I'll be careful, she promised. 20 minutes, not a second longer. Jack squeezed her hand. I'll create the distraction in exactly 5 minutes. Eleanor slipped away, moving purposefully toward the service areas. Behind her, she heard the first notes of a string quartet, the gala's entertainment beginning right on schedule. The service elevator was exactly where their intelligence had indicated. Using the security pass Jack had procured, Elena ascended to the 42nd floor, heart pounding but mind-focused. The executive level was dimly lit, security cameras positioned exactly where expected. Elena moved confidently, knowing the cameras would capture only a dark-haired woman in an evening gown, nothing to connect her to Elena Wright. William Blackwood's private office was locked behind an unmarked door at the end of the north corridor. Elena entered the key code Jack had obtained, holding her breath until the lock disengaged with a soft click. Inside, the office was a testament to old-world power. Heavy mahogany furniture, leather-bound books, oil paintings of stern-faced Blackwood ancestors. Elena moved directly to the bookcase hiding the entrance to William's private server room, remembering its location from her days as Robert's fiancée. The hidden door opened smoothly, revealing a small room with several servers humming quietly. Elena plugged in the specialized drive Jack had provided, designed to bypass security and extract specific data patterns. As the drive began working, Elena returned to the main office, searching for physical evidence. William Blackwood was old school. He believed in paper backups, physical copies of the most sensitive communications. In the bottom drawer of his desk, hidden beneath innocuous files, she found it, a locked metal box. Using the lock-picking skills she'd acquired during her years in hiding, Elena opened it to find a collection of USB drives, each labeled with only a date. One date jumped out immediately, 3 days before her world collapsed. The day she had confronted Robert about the irregularities she'd discovered. Elena's hands trembled as she pocketed the USB drive, then checked the status of the data extraction. 90% complete, with 7 minutes remaining of her allotted 20. Suddenly, voices in the corridor froze her in place. 2 men, walking closer. Blackwood wants the security reports on his desk tonight, one was saying. He's convinced Anderson is up to something. At this hour, the gala's still going on. You know how he is. Paranoid bastard. The footsteps paused outside the office door. Elena held her breath, calculating escape routes. There was nowhere to hide effectively, not if they actually entered. The handle turned. In that moment, a commotion erupted somewhere in the distance, shouting, the sound of breaking glass. Jack's distraction, right on cue. What the hell was that? The door handle released as the security guards responded to the more pressing concern. Check it out, one ordered. I'll continue the rounds. Elena remained motionless until both sets of footsteps receded, then moved quickly back to the server room. The extraction was complete. She removed the drive, erased all evidence of her presence, and slipped out of the office. The journey back to the gala was tense but uneventful. As she approached the Temple of Dendur, she could see Jack at the center of attention, apologizing profusely to a server covered in champagne, the apparent source of the distraction. Eleanor circled around, approaching Jack from a different direction than she had left, as planned. Mission accomplished, she whispered when she reached his side. The relief in his eyes was palpable. Thank God, let's get out of here. As they made their excuses and moved toward the exit, Robert intercepted them, his expression unreadable. Leaving so soon? Early morning tomorrow, Jack explained smoothly. The Vietnam proposal requires attention. Robert nodded, his eyes fixed on Elena. Of course. Business first, always. He reached out, taking her hand. It was truly a pleasure, Ms. Matthews. I have the strangest feeling we've met before. In another life, perhaps, Elena replied, holding his gaze steadily. Something flickered in Robert's eyes. Recognition, uncertainty, challenge. Perhaps. Though in my experience, people don't change as much as they think they do. Beneath new appearances, the essential nature remains. Some people change profoundly, Elena countered, unable to resist the pointed response, especially after betrayal. Robert's grip on her hand tightened imperceptibly. An interesting observation. Christina has remarkable insight into human nature, Jack intervened, placing his hand over Robert's until he released Elena's. It's part of what makes her invaluable to me. The tension between the three was electric, layers of unspoken meaning beneath the civilized exchange. Well then, Robert said finally, until next time. In the car leaving the museum, Elena finally allowed herself to breathe. That was too close. But worth it? Jack asked, nodding toward her evening bag where the USB drive and extraction device were secured. We'll see. She leaned back against the leather seat, adrenaline giving way to exhaustion. If what I think is on here is actually there. Jack reached across the space between them, taking her hand in his. Whatever happens, Elena, tonight you stood your ground. You faced them. That counts for something. The warmth of his touch, the sincerity in his voice, broke through her carefully maintained composure. 3 years of running, hiding, rebuilding from nothing, and now this moment of possibility, of hope, with the most unexpected ally imaginable. Thank you, she said softly, for believing in me when no one else did. Jack's eyes held hers in the dim light of the car. I believe in what I see. And from the moment you gave me that financial advice in the restaurant, I saw someone extraordinary. The honesty in his voice made her heart race. Without overthinking, Eleanor leaned across the space between them and kissed him. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with 3 years of pent-up emotion, her fear and loneliness, his recognition of something genuine in a world of artifice. When they finally parted, both were breathing unsteadily. I've wanted to do that for weeks, Jack admitted, his usual confidence replaced by uncharacteristic vulnerability. So have I, Elena smiled, but I was a bit preoccupied with corporate espionage and identity theft. Jack laughed, the tension breaking. Fair point, though I hope your schedule might be clearing up soon. Let's see what we found first. She glanced out the window as they approached Jack's building. Tomorrow could change everything. And it did. The evidence on the USB drive and server extraction exceeded their highest hopes. Emails between Robert and William discussing how to handle the Elena situation, instructions to IT to create false evidence, communications with SEC contacts to expedite the investigation. Most damning was an audio recording of Robert's conversation with his father the day after Elena had confronted him about the irregularities. She knows too much, William's voice said clearly. The Asian accounts, the shell companies, all of it. I'll handle Elena, Robert had replied. By the time I'm finished, her credibility will be destroyed. No one will believe a word she says. After 3 years of hiding, of doubting herself, of rebuilding from nothing, Elena finally had vindication. Working with Jack's legal team, they carefully assembled the evidence, building an airtight case that they presented simultaneously to the SEC, the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, and select financial journalists. The fallout was spectacular. Blackwood Financial's stock plummeted as the scandal broke. Robert and William were indicted on multiple counts of securities fraud, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. Former employees came forward with corroborating stories of intimidation and frame-ups. 3 months after the gala, Elena stood in Jack's office, watching the breaking news coverage of Robert Blackwood being escorted from his home in handcuffs. "How does it feel?" Jack asked, coming to stand beside her. "Surreal." She turned to face him. "For so long this seemed impossible. I'd resigned myself to a lifetime of hiding, of being someone else. And now?" His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Now I can be Elena Wright again." She smiled up at him. "Though I've grown rather attached to certain aspects of Christina Matthews' life," Jack raised an eyebrow. "Such as her job, for one. Her boss is quite impressive when he's not being arrogant." "Is that so?" Jack pulled her closer. "I hear he's completely reformed, humbled by a certain financial wizard who served him the best investment advice he ever received along with his overpriced steak." Elena laughed, the sound free of the shadows that had haunted her for years. "Then perhaps Christina should stay on as a consultant. For professional reasons, of course." "Of course!" Jack's expression turned more serious. "And what about Elena Wright? What does she want now that she has her life back?" Elena considered the question, the future suddenly wide open before her. Her professional reputation was being restored, her name cleared. She could return to the financial world, rebuild her career independently. But looking up at Jack, she realized that her priorities had shifted. The ambition that once drove her had been tempered by experience, by loss, and by finding something, someone, worth more than professional success. "She wants to build something new," Eleanor said softly. "Something honest, with someone who saw her value when she had nothing." Jack's smile was radiant as he pulled her into his arms. "I think that can be arranged." As their lips met, Eleanor felt the final pieces of her fractured life falling into place. From a chance encounter born of arrogance and pride, through danger and vindication, they had found in each other something neither had expected. Truth in a world of deception, strength in shared vulnerability, and love that had survived the ultimate test. The broken pieces of Elena Wright had not only been restored, but transformed into something stronger, more resilient, and infinitely more precious. And as Jack held her close, she knew with absolute certainty that neither of them would ever face life's battles alone again.